There. How are you? It's Joanne Owens with Keller Williams and Teamworks. We're just going to talk a little bit today about when you're considering selling your home by yourself, also known as a for sale by owner. So I'm going to reach out and I'm going to share my screen and we're going to walk through this together, okay? All right, here we go. So when you're thinking about selling your home on your own, there's things to consider like pricing, marketing, the buyer's ability to purchase, negotiating, and safety. Let's walk through this. Where did your pricing come from? Did you find it on Zillow, for example? Well, his estimate can be 30% one way or the other, right? They don't get into your home to see the condition, and they're not locally based. You know, Zillow is really a marketing firm that figured out how to sell real estate leads to lazy agents who like to pay for things to make their life more easy. They think we're like the travel industry, and we are not. In fact, a Zillow guy actually used a realtor to sell his property because the price was off so much. That's a little story for you to consider. Back to you, though. If it was 30% above the market, then you're going to be on the market for a long time. It's okay to price over the market. By 30% is a lot. And if you're not in a market of rising values, then you're simply not in the market, you're for sale. And that approach is okay if you don't need to sell, if you're only testing the waters. And let's think about it this way. The only thing to stop something from going downhill, let's think about a slinky, is to get in front of it. So do you know the current market conditions? They're hyper-local. So what do you know and where are you getting information back from? What if it's 30% below the market? Well, I'll tell you what, you're going to get a lot of action, but you're going to be leaving a lot of money on the table. Which leads me to this fact. Did you know that when a person sells without a realtor, according to the National Association of Realtors, it's fact, it's not fake news, you're going to sell it for 23% less than when you use a realtor. That's like selling for 75% of the actual value of the home. Let's look at that in real numbers. The average value of a home in our area right now is $350,000, and let's say you're average, which I'm sure you're not, but let's consider that. So if this estimate is off by 30%, right? That's $245,000 compared to $350,000. Oh my goodness. Well, here's another strategy. Maybe you got a price from an outbidding real estate agent, not a realtor. You know, there is a difference. You priced your home at $350,000, right on the money for your area. The stats show, though, that you're likely to sell it for less than it's worth by as much as 24%. That's a loss of 80,500 smackaroos. And yes, we all price our brokerage fees differently, but let's use 6% as an average, which would be a 3% to the listing agent and a 3% to the selling agent. A realtor who represented you and co-broke the sale with another agent could have put the additional $59,500 into your jeans. After all, in the big picture, what matters is how much money you've net on the sale of your home and how much time it takes to do just that. Let's talk about marketing. How are your potential buyers seeing you? On Zillow, on Trulia? We talked about that, right? It's always wonderful when your home is listed for $400,000 and it says below that on the Zestimate that it's $315,000. Ugh. Do you have someone prospecting for leads? Do you have a sign in the yard and that's it, the Zillow thing, and kind of wraps it up? How many open houses are you doing? Are you running any social media campaigns? Do you know where your buyer's coming from? Do you know how to find them? How to target a compelling message so that they'll find you with all this noise that's out there? Did you have your home staged? Is it at the top of its game? Let's talk about the buyer's ability to purchase. Let's say you've done an open house and you've got a few buyers. You haven't required them to sign in to follow up, but they call you and say they're interested. Well, number one, who's going to prepare the property, the contract, and who's going to close the sale? Let's say you have all that figured out. You have an attorney friend who'll do the paperwork and take the contract to close. The buyer has figured out how to get a home inspection and you're off to the races, except you didn't see any proof of funds. In the case of cash, it would be a letter from their bank. In the case of a mortgage, it would be a letter from their lender that you would call and verify things with, but you didn't. And your days before closing and the buyer says they can't get financing, they forgot about the foreclosure they had a few years back. The deal is dead. They asked for their deposit. You did get an escrow deposit, right? And if they're still in their financing contingency, then they can get their deposit back. And you've just lost 30 days. Your things may be in a moving truck. You may have purchased another property. That's a big, oh my, ugh. Now you're back to square one. Think about that. Negotiations, the ability to negotiate. I think this requires its own section. And why? Well, one, there's almost always a negotiation over price. Two, sometimes it may be about the closing date. Number three, there's always a negotiation about repairs, even on an as-is contract. There just is. And sometimes a property does not appraise, and that's another time to negotiate. I want you to think about this. If someone comes to your home and slips on your steps and sues you, God forbid, do you have their attorney represent you? I wouldn't think so. Take a moment to chew on just that. Let's talk about your safety. Through all of our time in real estate, 17 years for me, this is the number one thing that frightens me for folks who think about selling themselves. Who are you letting into your home? Just a short story. I dropped by an open house that was being held by a lady in her 80s. She had a lot of nice things and she had a lot of prescriptions hanging around. When I asked her why she was selling her home on her own, she said that her son told her to do that because she'd save money. Well, I asked her for her son's phone number and I called him. I asked him when the last time was that he had visited his mom, and he said over a year ago, and I told him what I saw. And I told him, if you want to sell that home for sale by owner, then you come down here and you do it for her. This beautiful woman was set up for theft, assault. I don't even want to think about it. But you think about that. Who is walking into your home? A dedicated and well-trained realtor pre-screens their clients. They thoroughly check them out and they know whether they have the ability to purchase. If they don't get in the car. And if they're sketchy, and we know how to check that out, they do not get in the car. Does that make sense? Electronic lock boxes on homes ensure that only professionals can access the home and that showings are monitored. Well, in closing, I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to preach or lecture. It's entirely up to you. I just want you to consider all of the things I've spoken about. And there's a lot of areas that I didn't cover, a lot of things that happen, a lot of things that could happen that you have to be prepared for. Remember, it's not about saving a fee. I do want you to think about this. If you're working right now, or if you have worked, whatever you did, I bet you are doing, I bet you're really good at it. I don't think you'd expect me to waltz in and just take over for you. You see, getting really good at something does take time on task, right? And it takes dedication. It takes constant training as industries change. So just think about your time, your safety, and your home, which is probably one of the most expensive assets you own. Think about that. We're standing by. Just ask. So I hope you enjoyed it, and reach out to us, 941-779-5149.